She didn't quit. That's the part that gets me every time I think about this story. She had every reason to walk out that door, every reason to leave, to cry in her car, to dust off her resume and never look back. But she didn't quit. She counted. Her name doesn't matter. What matters is what she did, and what she built quietly over 2 years, inside a school district that had failed her. She worked in administration, scheduling, compliance, staff coordination, the kind of job where you're everywhere and nobody notices until something goes wrong. She was good at it. The records proved that. And then a new director came in. Within 3 months, the entire atmosphere of her department had curdled. Meetings that used to be collaborative turned into public audits. Staff would sit in silence while the director combed through their work line by line, finding errors, or inventing them. Corrections that were never documented, praise that only ever came privately and always came with a catch, the compliment that's really a warning, the affirmation that's really a leash. But what this director did to her specifically, that was different. It started with scheduling. She'd submit a plan, it would be approved. Then, in front of the whole team, the director would announce the plan was wrong, that it had always been wrong, and that she should have known better. The meeting room felt colder than usual. In front of her peers, the director's voice was calm, almost helpful, as she systematically stripped away years of hard-earned professional respect. Every word was a calculated strike. No paper trail, no prior note, just public humiliation dressed up as management. Then came the email. An email sent to 3 senior administrators, with her name in the subject line, describing her as a consistent liability to the department's compliance standards. She hadn't been told about it. She wasn't copied. She found out weeks later, from a colleague who thought she already knew. That email wasn't the worst thing the director ever did, but it was the first thing she printed out. This story was shared publicly on Reddit by the person who lived it. The original post link is in the description. Go read their own words. It hits different. She went home that night, pulled out a small notebook, the kind with a coiled spine and a red cover, and she wrote down everything she could remember. Dates, times, who was in the room, what was said, how it was said. She started a folder on her laptop. She labeled it something innocuous, something no one would click, and then she kept showing up. But she wasn't quitting. She was counting. The first 3 months of documentation felt almost pointless. She was collecting incidents that, individually, looked like nothing. A sarcastic comment in a staff meeting, a task reassigned without explanation, an email chain where she was removed mid-thread, workplace friction, the kind of thing HR dismisses in the first 60 seconds of a conversation. She knew that, so she kept writing. The director's behavior escalated over the following months in a way that followed a pattern. Patterns, unlike individual incidents, are hard to argue away. There was a formal complaint filed against a younger colleague who had pushed back on a scheduling change, a complaint the director wrote herself. Conflict of interest, undisclosed. She wrote that down. 6 months in, something shifted. The director began targeting her attendance, marking her late on days she had documentation proving otherwise, sign-in sheets she'd saved photographs of, emails sent at 7:48 in the morning, timestamps don't lie. And suddenly the attendance markings looked less like clerical errors and more like a campaign. That's when she upgraded her system. She started backing everything up externally, USB drive, cloud storage, printed copies in a binder at home. Every email, every attendance record, every meeting note she could reconstruct. She started keeping a second notebook, one for the incidents and one specifically for witnesses. Who was in the room, whether they saw what she saw, whether they'd be willing to say so. It came on a Tuesday. The director sent an email to the school's principal referencing a performance concern that had never been formally raised, citing a meeting that had never occurred, and recommending a probationary review. All of it fabricated. She printed it. She printed the 3 emails that contradicted it. She put all 4 of them in the binder, and then she reached out to 2 former colleagues who'd left the district in the previous year. And then she found the second complaint, filed 2 years earlier, buried. A former employee, Someone who had left quietly, saying nothing publicly, had filed a formal complaint against this same director at a previous district. Same pattern: public humiliation, manufactured documentation. That complaint had been settled internally, with a non-disclosure clause so narrow it didn't prevent the director from moving to a new district entirely. The complaint existed, it was discoverable, and nobody in the current district had looked. She had. What happened in that Thursday meeting would later be read aloud in an HR investigation. It was a routine check-in. At least, that's what the agenda said. The director opened the meeting by announcing that she was recommending a formal performance improvement plan, a PIP, for failure to meet departmental standards. No prior written warning, no documented counseling, just a PIP, handed across the table like a verdict, with 2 other administrators in the room as witnesses. She didn't cry, she didn't argue. She said she'd review it and get back to them. That evening, she called 2 of the 3 former colleagues she'd been in contact with. Both agreed to provide written statements. One agreed to be interviewed directly. She had a case. She'd had pieces of one for months. Now she had the architecture. Before we get to what she did next, if you're watching this and you've ever worked for someone like this, hit subscribe, because every week we bring you the stories of people who didn't just survive. They reckoned. Now, back to her. There was one moment where it almost unraveled. 2 weeks before she filed anything, one of the witnesses got cold feet. Not because they doubted what they'd seen, but because they still had a professional relationship with the district. They called her and said they couldn't do it, that they were sorry, that she understood. She said she did, and she meant it. She went back through her binder. One witness walking away didn't break the case. It just made it leaner. She still had 14 months of dated, time-stamped, cross-referenced records. She still had the Tuesday email. She gave herself 3 more days. She organized the binder chronologically, then reorganized it by category. Then she made an appointment with the district's HR office. She walked in on a Thursday morning carrying a binder that was 2 inches thick. She didn't lead with anger. She didn't cry. She set the binder on the table, opened to the first tabbed section, and said, calmly, quietly, that she had documentation she believed constituted a pattern of workplace harassment, retaliation, and the falsification of personnel records by her direct supervisor. Then she slid the summary across the table and asked them to read it before she said anything else. They read it. The formal complaint was filed that same day. 48 hours later, the district initiated an internal investigation. Within the first week, they had interviewed every active staff member in the department. Within the second week, they had contacted the previous district. What they found confirmed everything. The attendance records had been altered. The investigation traced the edits directly to the director's administrative login. The meeting referenced in the Tuesday email had never occurred. The prior complaint revealed a pattern so consistent it was flagged as evidence of intentional conduct. This wasn't a management style, this was a method. The director was placed on administrative leave during the final stage of the investigation. She was called in for a meeting, the kind of meeting where someone sits across from you and tells you what they found, and the only question left is how this ends. The meeting lasted 11 minutes. 11 minutes to end a career that had terrorized an entire school for 8 years. When it was over, she didn't say a word. 11 minutes to end a career that had terrorized an entire school for 8 years. When it was over, she didn't say a word. The termination was effective immediately. The framed certificates came off the wall. The parking space had a different name in it by the following Monday. 2 weeks later, the district's legal team reached out regarding a settlement. They accepted $30,000, not life-changing money, not the kind of number that rewrites your whole story. But that's not what it meant. What it meant was that an institution put its name on a document acknowledging what she'd been through. They accepted $30,000, not life-changing money, not the kind of number that rewrites your whole story. But that's not what it meant. What it meant was that an institution put its name on a document acknowledging what she'd been through and paid her for it. That's not a transaction, that's a verdict. 2 years of people assuming she was enduring when she was, in fact, engineering. The director thought she had power. She had access. She had a title. She had an institution willing to look the other way, until the cost of looking away became higher than the cost of reckoning. And this woman who showed up early, who covered shifts, who endured public humiliation without flinching, she understood something the director never did. That power built on fear has an expiration date, that institutions protect themselves first. They called her weak. She called it preparation. Some people call that justice. Around here, we call it reckoning. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever worked for someone like this? Drop it in the comments below. Your story might be the next reckoning we narrate. Subscribe so you never miss a reckoning. I'll see you in the next one.